Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a quick check of today's highlights. Korea's finance minister is looking to boost trade with more promising markets and slowly wean off its dependence on U.S. and China amid growing protectionist sentiment. The U.S. has pulled out from the mega TPP trade deal, and we take a look at what impact a failed TPP might have on the Korean economy. Korea's finance minister says the country will look for new channels of growth and trade in the face of looming global economic uncertainties coming from the U.S. and China. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
To bolster trade, Korea's top economic policymaker says the government will boost economic cooperation with countries that hold great growth potential and slowly reduce trade dependence on its largest trading partners, China and the U.S.
Two of Korea's largest partners are currently facing a lot of uncertainties. Because of this, we'll strengthen economic cooperation with other markets that have strong growth potential and reduce reliance on the two countries.
At a ministerial level meeting Thursday morning, Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho said despite these plans, the government would work quickly to enhance stability with the world's two largest economies. Yoo said Seoul would build mutually beneficial relations with the new U.S. administration while seeking ways to boost economic relations with Beijing. He also outlined some of the major concerns for Korea, identifying among them the Trump administration's protectionist policies and China's apparent retaliatory measures against the planned deployment of the THAAD missile defense system to South Korea. In order to find growth potential elsewhere, the minister said the government will help local companies win more overseas contracts using all possible means, including private resources and diplomatic cooperation. Included in these plans are the government's push to draw up fresh trade strategies and target promising markets like the Middle East and South America. Minister Yoo also said Seoul will work with other countries to devise ways to build a stronger global economy. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
Korea's business sentiment among manufacturers has improved to the highest level in nearly 2 years in January. The Bank of Korea's business survey index for this month came in at 75, up 3 points from December. The figure falls slightly short of 80 points posted in April of 2015. The central bank cites strong exports this month for the improved sentiment. The Customs Service says outbound shipments went up 25% in the first 20 days of this month from the same period a year earlier. Still, a reading below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. And pundits say the upward trend needs more monitoring to see if it will continue to rise in the coming months. Korean memory chip maker SK Hynix saw a boost in fourth quarter operating profits last year on the back of surging semiconductor prices. The company said Thursday that operating profits in the final 3 months of last year amounted to $1.3 billion. It also marks the first time since the third quarter in 2015 that the company's operating profits have topped the 1 trillion won mark, or roughly $865 million. Fourth quarter revenue reached $4.6 billion, up 21% from the same period in the previous year. SK Hynix attributed the favorable market conditions in the fourth quarter to a 13% rise in DRAM chip shipments and 14% on-year rise in average chip prices. U.S. shares rallied overnight on Wednesday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average closing above 20,000 for the first time on the back of solid earnings and expectations about U.S. President Donald Trump's growth initiatives. And Korean shares also extended their gains following another stellar day from Wall Street. And for more on this, we now connect to our Kim Min-ji on the phone. So Min-ji, a new milestone on Wall Street.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average smashed through the 20,000-point level for the first time ever on Wednesday. The historic rally was helped by strong earnings and expectations about President Donald Trump's spending projects and other proposals for growth. The Dow jumped nearly 0.8% to close at a record high of 20,068.5. The Dow has now risen by more than 1,700 points since Trump won the election back in November. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq also hit all-time highs, with both having risen nearly 10% since Trump's presidential victory. Since his inauguration, Trump has signed several executive orders, including one to ease regulations on domestic manufacturers and another giving the green light for the construction of two controversial oil pipelines, rolling back key environmental actions of the previous administration.
No doubt about it, there has been a positive response. Some of the presidential initiatives that have been put into place already, bringing back XL pipeline and other things like that, that certainly led to a lot of the materials makers advancing energy, the expectation of reflationary policies have certainly helped the financials particularly.
And Korean shares also continue their winning streak on Thursday following overnight gains on Wall Street, right?
Yes, you're right. Korean shares closed higher on Thursday. The benchmark Kospi added over 0.8%, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq surged nearly 1.2%. Market bellwether Samsung Electronics hit a fresh record, topping 2 million won per share or $1,725 at one point in trading. It ended up just shy of 1.3%. As for prospects for the Korean market down the line, Korean shares are expected to extend the gains seen on Wall Street. Now, if the uncertainties around Trump's new policies diminish, the market rally is expected to live on in the U.S. Improved conditions in the U.S. economy are also expected to have a positive impact on trade in emerging economies. But experts point out the lingering concerns over increased protectionism and to what extent Trump will be able to fulfill his pledges will remain important variables for the foreseeable future. Back to you, Jian.
Now, tomorrow marks the beginning of the Lunar New Year holiday, which for Chinese travelers stretches through February 2nd this year. But it's shaping up to be a tough season for travel agencies and retailers, as the Chinese government, unhappy with Korea's THAAD decision, looks to be swaying tourists away from the country. Our Eunice Kim has more.
Together with China's Labor Day in May and National Day in October, the Lunar New Year holiday at the start of the year is typically a busy time for Korea's travel industry. And though millions of Chinese will fly abroad for their holiday this year, domestic businesses are pessimistic they'll see much growth compared to years past. In fact, the travel industry is expecting traffic of yuka, or large Chinese tour groups, to plummet by as much as 60% compared to last year. Keeping in mind more than 500,000 Chinese visited Korea last February, that could translate to some 328,000 fewer visitors. This comes as Beijing has reportedly applied pressure on Chinese agencies to slash tours to Korea, reportedly citing concerns over low-quality travel programs. Earlier this month, it was confirmed that Chinese aviation authorities had rejected charter flight requests for the Lunar New Year period, submitted by Asiana Airlines, Jeju Air, and Jin Air, an unprecedented move. As Beijing has not directly commented on the reason behind these barricades, many in Korea are viewing this as additional silent retaliation for Seoul's commitment to deploy the U.S.-made THAAD anti-missile system later this year. A political decision seeping into the country's business realities as retailers in Korea, including newly opened in-city duty-free outlets, scramble to make the most of the coming traffic, even if they are less the high-spending yukas and more the cost-aware individual travelers in their 20s and 30s. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
It's been just under a week since U.S. President Donald Trump took office, and so far, he has followed through with many of his campaign pledges to put America first. He has pulled out of the massive 12-nation Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal and says he plans to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. Take a look.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, A mega free trade deal among 12 Pacific Rim countries was signed by former U.S. President Barack Obama last year after years of negotiations. Obama had said the agreement was intended to lower tariffs and establish rules for resolving trade disputes, setting patents, and protecting intellectual property. But this week, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to abandon this multilateral trade deal, underlining his aggressive and protectionist stance on trade with foreign competitors. This decision crushed other members of the TPP, but some nations, including Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore, said on Tuesday that they'll try to move forward with the agreement even without the U.S. On top of the TPP falling apart, Trump said this week that he also plans to renegotiate NAFTA by meeting with the leaders of Canada and Mexico. And all of these protectionist moves by Trump are raising concerns for Korea as well, with some saying that Washington may also try to renegotiate the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement in the near future.
And to tell us more, Professor Kim Taewon from Ewha Women's University joins us in the studio today. Great to have you here.
Good afternoon.
All right, so with the U.S. pulling out from the TPP, some are actually saying the deal is basically dead. But then, like we heard in the report, some of the TPP countries are willing to move forward with this deal even without the United States. So in your opinion, where is this TPP headed from here on out?
Well, without the United States, it is almost impossible to finalize the construction of TPP. The 12 TPP member countries with the United States cover 40% of the global GDP. But 11 TPP member countries without the United States only covers 13% of the global GDP.
Okay.
So without United States economic and diplomatic power, TPP will lose its momentum. Instead, the TPP member countries will pursue bilateral FTA between member countries.
Now, what impact would a failed TPP have on the Korean economy then? I mean, is it positive or negative?
Well, in the short run, the failure of the TPP will have a positive impact on Korean export. One of the largest beneficiaries of TPP was Japan. And we know that Japan's major industries like electronics and automakers are competing with Korean companies. So failure of the TPP will make more room to Korean companies in the global market.
Now, Trump also said that he plans to renegotiate NAFTA, and he did say that the U.S. will slap a 35% border tax on companies manufacturing in Mexico and selling in the U.S. So with all that, if that were to happen, then wouldn't Korea's exports be affected as well?
That's true. In the structure of Korean companies, actually major Korean companies export to United States. Mexico is a very important production base. So because of that, quite a few Korean companies has huge facilities in the Mexico. So according to Kotra, last year's Korean companies' production in Mexico amounts to $22 billion.
Wow.
But if U.S. government imposes 35% of the tariffs with Mexican productions, there's no economic incentive for Korean companies to produce more in Mexico.
Then what are the chances that Trump may renegotiate the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement?
Well, the people from Trump administration directly and indirectly mentioning a revision of Korea-U.S. FTA.
Okay.
So it is quite clear that in the near future, U.S. will be demanding a revision and renegotiation of the FTA. But it is not going to be an overall revision of the FTA like that of the NAFTA. Instead, it is kind of going to be a partial revision because of the conflicts of interest between U.S. industries, particularly between agriculture and automobile.
Now, at this point, I'm wondering, would the United States be okay by throwing out all these multilateral trade deals? I mean, would such moves help the American economy in the long run?
Well, actually, that is the most seriously asked question in the United States, academically and practically. And in early January, American Nobel Prize winners in economics altogether announced officially that protective trade policy is no good to U.S. economy. Particularly, that really seriously hurt the business model of the most high-tech and most profitable companies of the United States, like Google, Apple, and Nike, and so on. So therefore, in the long run, there will be strong objection from these companies' industries.
Now, I think China is also looking to take over the leadership role in global trade as U.S. is kind of, putting forth protectionist measures. So with that, where do we see multilateral trade deal RCEP going, which is led by China?
Well, naturally, RCEP will gain stronger momentum by Chinese leadership. Last week, we saw quite interesting scene in Davos, Switzerland. Chinese President Xi made a strong defense on globalization and free trade, which is unusual. So free trade will be protected by Chinese government. That's the strong belief between member countries. But that signals China will exercise their leadership stronger in building on RCEP in the near future.
So with Trump expected to put forth more protectionist measures, how should Korea prepare so that its exporters don't take a further blow from all this?
First of all, we need to prepare a renegotiation of the FTA with United States. For that purpose, we need to have a more professional and more comprehensive negotiation team inside the government. And in the long run, it is very important to extend our FTA with a South American region and South Asian region.
So I guess it's important for Korea to come up with a lot of other trade, bilateral trade with other countries, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Tomorrow, Friday, marks the start of the Lunar New Year holiday here in Korea, which will last until next Monday. So we'll be back next Tuesday with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and for those of you here in Korea heading back to your hometowns, drive safe and happy Lunar New Year.